We've talked about systematic risk and idiosyncratic risk. We've talked about how to measure idiosyncratic risk. And now in this video, we want to talk about how do you measure systematic risk. So if you want to talk more about measuring systematic risk, stick around and we'll get into it. Systematic risk deals with the level of macroeconomic risk a firm or an investment faces. If the economy improves and the company has a high degree of systematic risk, the company will improve as well. However, if the economy slips into recession and the company has a high degree of systematic risk, the company will have difficulty as well. The underlying idea behind systematic risk is that when the economy is doing well, people are employed, companies are paying bonus checks to their employees, and the stock market is going up. The people who are receiving all of this cash will spend it. Companies that produce goods or services that are in demand when the economy improves are said to have a lot of systematic risk, and they will flourish when the economy is booming. Examples include travel and tourism companies, auto manufacturers, luxury good producers, and tech companies. However, when the economy falters, people are becoming unemployed, companies are banning travel, freezing hiring, cutting overtime, and bonus checks. These people will have less to spend. The first thing they will cut back on is discretionary spending. They're likely not to take a big family vacation that year or upgrade their vehicle anytime soon. So companies that produce those type of products will be hurt disproportionately badly by the downturn. Now compare that with a company who produces products whose sales are not a function of disposable income. Are people more likely to buy the bare necessities when the economy is doing poorly? Do people stop eating? Well, obviously not. They may change what they eat, or they may change where they eat, but they will still eat. So companies that produce staples such as rice or beans may find that they actually sell more goods during a recession as people cut out some of the fast food and institute a beans and rice night at home. Basic healthcare providers may see something similar as people will hopefully continue to get care for basic conditions like high blood pressure, acid reflux, or basic dental care even in the downturn. Now that we know what high and low degrees of systematic risk look like, how can we measure them? We could use linear regression, which is a mathematical procedure that attempts to ascertain a linear relation between two variables. In this case, imagine economic activity is being used to predict the company performance. If the company does a lot better when the economy does well, we might see this relation as something like the red line in this graph. If the company's performance doesn't vary much with the overall economy, we might see the relation as something more like the green line in this graph. Remember back to 6th grade math class. We were able to determine the slope of a line by simply putting the rise over the run, or maybe back in freshman calculus when we heard the prof talking about dy over dx. In this case, both of these two meanings are the same. We're trying to determine how much the company performance changes with changes in the macroeconomy. We can calculate that by simply determining the slope of either of these two lines on the chart. In order to compute the slope, we will need some points on the line. We will operationalize our relation between these two factors by proxying the S&P 500 returns for economic activity and company stock returns for company performance. You can collect data on historic stock and index prices from a variety of sources. Personally, I like either Bloomberg or Yahoo Finance. When you download the stock prices, you need to convert those prices into returns. First off, we want to use adjusted closing prices. The adjustment here is to increase the closing price by the amount of any dividend paid at any given point in time. Since investors make money either by selling stocks for more than they paid or by receiving dividends from the companies they own, we need one number that includes both types of returns, and using adjusted closing prices does just that. Next, we need to decide both the period of time across which we want to compare these two variables and how frequently we want to sample them. Typically, you can download daily, weekly, or monthly, or in some cases, annual price data. Daily data contains a lot of noise, so we don't want to use that. Also, the more observations we have, the more robust our model will be, so using annual data is not that good either. That leaves weekly and monthly data. Either of those two will work. As for the length of time for the analysis, well, that depends on how long the company has essentially been the same company. Changing product markets, capital structures, corporate strategies, operational strategies, and many other aspects can influence a company's systematic risk. You'll want to consider carefully how long has it been that the company has essentially been in its current form. All else equal, a longer time horizon gives you more data, but it also introduces the potential for some corporate change having affected the company's systematic risk. As an example, in my mind, Apple has been a cell phone company since about 2010. So if I were analyzing Apple's systematic risk, I would go back until 2010. However, they seem to be changing again, and this time into more of an entertainment company. So my analysis from 2010 to now may also be obsolete at some point. Once you have the closing adjusted stock price data downloaded, you will need to convert those prices into holding period returns. To do that, divide the later price by the earlier price and subtract the number 1. That gives you the stockholder returns from the time of the earlier to the later observation, typically either a month or a week, depending on the frequency that you've selected. You'll want to do that same thing for both the S&P 500 and for the company that you're analyzing. The best thing to do next is to run a regression, and to do that, you can go into the Data tab in Excel and choose to run the regression. However, if you aren't comfortable with regressions, you can also use the slope function in Excel. Simply enter equals slope and then in parentheses put the company returns and the S&P 500 returns, where the company returns is the array of company returns from the oldest to the newest, and the S&P 500 returns is the same for the index that we're using to proxy the global economy. The beta coefficient, or slope, depending on how you ran the analysis, relates to the company in question's systematic risk. The S&P 500 is characterized by an average level of systematic risk and would show a beta of 1. A beta greater than 1 means the asset in question is riskier than the S&P 500 average, and a beta less than 1 means the company exhibits less than average systematic risk. Other important betas are 0, which means that the asset is riskless, and a beta less than 0 would mean that the asset's returns move in the opposite direction of the S&P 500 returns, which, as we will see later, can be very favorable for risk reduction in a portfolio. That's it. Now you have your measure for systematic risk.